After the death of Paul von Hindenburg on August 2, 1934, Germany stood on the brink of one of the most dramatic turns in its history. The very next day, a plebiscite was held in which Hitler proposed combining the positions of President and Chancellor into a single rule, Führer and Reich Chancellor. This consolidation allowed him to concentrate unprecedented power in his hands, and from that moment Germany's entire political structure became subordinate to Nazi ideology. Political parties that could have opposed Hitler were already banned, and legal mechanisms capable of limiting his power were dismantled. Hey everyone, I'm Dmitr, and today in the Heads of History free mode, we are going to explore the rise of the Third Reich, from a nation humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles to a powerful war machine that ignited another world war. But before we started, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really motivates me to make more videos for you. This is only my second video, so I'll leave a link in the cards up top my review of the Great Britain mod. Well, I won't keep you any longer. Enjoy the video. So, Germany, January 1st, 1936. Having almost recovered from the horrors of the First World War, it was still affected by the all-encompassing limitations of the Treaty of Versailles. This treaty became a symbol of Germany's humiliation, depriving it of significant territories, including Alsace and Lorraine, the Saar Basin, and parts of East Prussia. Military restrictions reduced the army to 100,000 men, stripped the country of its air force and navy, destroying its defensive capabilities and leaving national pride in ruins. Furthermore, Article 231, the so-called Guilt Clause, placed full responsibility for the war on Germany, cementing a sense of injustice and a desire for revenge among the German population. Now the leadership planned to end these limitations as Hitler announced a course towards national resurgence. Identifying three main adversaries, the Soviet Union, France and Poland, he began forming a new government. Stefan Schnabel was appointed as the administrative advisor. Together with the current Minister of Economy, Arthur Clear, they would attempt to effectively conscript new soldiers without harming the economy. Responsibility for foreign policy was given to the experienced and prestigious ambassador Max Tetzlaff. The Minister of War, or Wehrminister, became Thorsten Klee, Arthur Klee's brother. He was tasked with preparing the Wehrmacht for a new world war and mechanizing the army according to our new Blitzkrieg combat doctrine. Adolf Hitler began restoring Germany by undermining the provisions of the Treaty of Versailles, focusing efforts on strengthening the economy, national spirit and the military. In 1935, general conscription was introduced, and the Wehrmacht, Kriegsmarine and Luftwaffe were created, directly violating the treaty's terms. Now he decided to go even further, forming a new officer corps from ambitious commanders loyal to his ideology. The plan to regain territories included the complete annexation of neighboring Austria, Czechoslovakia and Poland, whose borders prevented us from connecting with East Prussia. Approving a new political and economic course with an emphasis on rearmament, innovation centers in Berlin began researching new equipment, which in the future would allow for faster mechanization of the entire Wehrmacht. One of the conditions for rearmament was the development of infrastructure. Soldiers, officers and conscripts needed quality and rapid movement, at least in the central regions of the country. The idea of network of modern high-speed roads appeared back in the Weimar Republic, but was actively implemented only in 1933. The Autobahns were presented by propaganda as a symbol of the revival of German progress, technological progress, and care for the people. In early April, one of the most risky but successful political steps was taken: the remilitarization of the Ireland. This was a clear violation of international agreements, but the reaction of the international community was weak. France, which could have responded militarily, was in a political crisis and did not dare to take active measures without the support of Great Britain. The British government preferred the policy of appeasement, viewing these actions as a restoration of justice after the harsh conditions of Versailles. The success of the remilitarization indicated that further steps could be taken. Therefore, after increasing investments in factories, schools, and new universities within the framework of the 4-year plan, further from Bock's 30,000-strong army redeployed from Poland to Austria. Agents of the Abwehr were sent to Vienna on direct orders. There, they were to infiltrate the government and prepare the ground for the future Anschluss. On February 2nd, envoys from Italy brought news, a proposal for an alliance. Now the Allies faced worthy opponents in the form of the Axis Berlin-Rome alliance, and Austria was likely doomed to annexation. On the evening of May 4th, pressure on the Austrian government sharply increased. A day before, Austrian Chancellor Kurt Schuschnigg announced a referendum to determine whether Austria wanted to maintain independence. By this time, the Abwehr's agent network was strong enough to force Schuschnigg to resign. The situation became critical, and taking advantage of the government's indecision, Arthur Seyss-Inquart, the leader of the Austrian Nazi Party, took power. He immediately requested assistance to restore order, and on the next morning, May 5th, 1938, troops began crossing the Austrian border. The army met no resistance. On the contrary, they were greeted by crowds waving flags and chanting slogans in support of the Anschluss. Hitler, aiming to present the Anschluss as a peaceful unification, ordered his soldiers to behave amicably and avoided violence. Although resistance was offered in certain parts of the country, thanks to coordinated work with the Italians, all Austrian divisions were disarmed through joint efforts. Thus, practically without a single shot, Austria's independence was eliminated. This provided access to new resources, military infrastructure, and strategic positions. Next in line was Czechoslovakia, a state that gained independence during the collapse of former ally Austro-Hungary. Retrained divisions of the former Bundesheer took positions on the border and reinforced von Bock's army. The plan for the future annexation was to pressure the Czechoslovak government through numerical and territorial advantage and force them to surrender without a fight. On the world stage, thanks to the efforts of diplomat Mark Tetzlaff, who presented the annexation as the last territorial claim and a move towards pacification, the Allies proposed meeting in Munich to officially approve everything on paper. During the conference, the Allies allowed the annexation of Czechoslovakia's territories. In return, a pledge was made to refrain from any further annexation actions towards Poland, France, Denmark, and other neighboring states. By the beginning of winter, albeit delayed, Czechoslovakia was absorbed. Then, of the initiative of NSDAP's foreign policy leader Alfred Rosenberg, a puppet state of Slovakia was established on Slovak territory, headed by Josef Tiso. In the Czech lands, although with less autonomy, the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia was formed. Now, with significant manpower from Austria and numerous factories from Skoda, the early part of 1939 was focused on transitioning the economy to a war footing. A covert mobilization was conducted. Submarines commissioned by Admiral Dönitz were added to the Kriegsmarine, and factories produced tanks intended to be the main combat units according to the new Blitzkrieg doctrine. Although the Allies were wary of these large-scale preparations, they believed their actions were nothing more than provocations. To justify the attack on Poland, the Abwehr organized the Glavitz incident. Operatives posing as Poles initiated an attack on a radio station in the city of Glavitz, allowing the portrayal of Poland as the aggressor. On the night of December 19, 1939, war was declared on Poland without presenting an ultimatum. Divisions moved forward and began advancing in several directions. The priority was Warsaw, as capturing it quickly would expedite the Polish government's capitulation. The first clashes with the Polish army occurred near the border in the areas of Radomsko and Częstochowa. The enemy did not have time to regroup and was quickly defeated. By the middle of the first week of the invasion, France and Great Britain, bound by military alliances with Poland, declared war. However, in practice they were reluctant to fight over Poland, so their actions were limited to diplomatic statements and minor activity on the Western Front, which became known as the Phony War. Almost a month later, Warsaw was captured, where the Polish army offered strong resistance in the suburbs. Nevertheless, due to a lack of modern equipment and armaments, enemy cavalry brigades could hardly oppose the tanks. By the end of January, the last organized enemy divisions capitulated, signifying complete victory over Poland. The invasion marked the beginning of World War II and demonstrated the Allies' inability to contain the aggression. In the occupied territories, predominantly in the West, the general government was established, which Alfred Rosenberg volunteered to lead. The Wehrmacht was at the peak of its moral and physical condition. Victory in Poland not only strengthened the position as a leading military power in Europe, but also gave soldiers confidence in their capabilities. The success of the Blitzkrieg became the foundation for further strategic operations, and generals like Heinz Guderian and Erich von Manstein had the opportunity to refine their tactics. Germany stood on the brink of a new era of conquest, which on the spring of 1940 would change the map of Europe and lead to the downfall of France and the Benelux countries. Well, I hope you enjoyed this playthrough. Write in the comments what you'd like to see in the next videos. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.